Alright, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel and welcome back to the From Computer to Cardboard series. We are going to be designing an Outer Wilds board game, and it's really starting to dawn on me just how much of a monumentous task this might be. Now, if you haven't played the Outer Wilds video game, I suggest you go and do that first, because if that game is spoiled for you, you will not be able to play it and enjoy it. That is how impactful and important this game is. But, as I've said in previous episodes, Outer Wilds is like an escape room. If part of it is revealed to you, that fun of solving the puzzle and figuring out is kind of ruined, and Outer Wilds is a game that can be played only once. Now, how do we turn an experience like that into a board game? Well, first thing, my main goal is to create a game that can only be played once. I've spent a lot of time so far working up to where I am right now. And we're going to run through some of the ideas that I have now, and we're going to see if that ends up fully fleshing out into the end, or if much changes or not. But actually, let's run through some of the design ideas, some of the problems that need to be solved in creating this game. Because the first thing, if a person has played the Outer Wilds video game and then comes and plays this game, and all the puzzles and stuff that I design are just references to the video game, there's nothing for them to solve anymore. They just reiterate the information that they remember from playing the video game, and there's not much of a game there. There's no challenge to that. So the first thing that I had to consider is, how do I change the video game to the board game, but keep that same touchstone, a lot of the same kind of feel, and like maybe some of those same things, like certain places or characters interact in the same sort of way, so that it does still feel familiar, like Outer Wilds. But I felt like the most important thing, and what is going to drive the experience, is the narrative. Now, the narrative, again, can't be the same, so I have to create a different narrative for the game. And this has been interesting because Outer Wilds gives you a lot to play with. They kind of slowly introduce you to something that's kind of close to like a historical record, that like reveals why things were made and like how it came to be, and kind of like from stuff a long time. You know, a lot of it's kind of secondhand, and so my goal is to interact with some of that, maybe rewrite some of that, and create a new and different narrative, so that if you are a big fan of the video game, this will feel something different to you. Like, it's not going to be like, oh yeah, we've already done this already, right? I'm not going to go through that. In a later episode, I think rather than doing a playtest episode, we might just do a playthrough episode and then do like a feedback afterwards, where instead of me talking over the B-roll, like you can actually see it being played, which I think might be a bit more communicative of what's happening here. Now, the narrative, I've not fully written a whole thing. I've kind of got like a beginning and an end and like some pieces in the middle, and as I'm working on it more things will get added to that, and figure out a way to make all the characters kind of interact and work together, which is a challenge, because Outer Wilds is kind of open and closed. Like the ending has a lot of finality to it, so there is going to be some artistic liberty in how I'm going to be creating a new narrative and reusing some of the existing characters. But the narrative gives us a beginning point and an end point. And so we go, okay, this is the beginning point, this is who you are playing as, this is, you know, the people that you're going to meet at the beginning, and how they're going to explain the game to you. And Outer Wilds kind of has that, where Timberhearth has like a tutorial island kind of a vibe to it. There's lots of people that will teach you the different mechanics. We're not going to be doing that as much. Hornfels will be there, and he'll be, you know, like kind of open the game to you and explain things. But it is still somewhat going to be an escape room, where the goal is you are kind of sequentially solving puzzles so that you can, I don't know, solve the whole thing. Outer Wilds regularly is a bit like that, where you are sequentially solving puzzles, except that they're not delivered to you linearly. In fact, they're all kind of webbed together, and the different locations overlap a little bit to help you figure out what the other different locations are like. Like Dark Bramble, for example, there's a lot of pieces of Dark Bramble in other places, which kind of makes you go, oh, maybe that's the next place that I should go. Oh, this tells me a little bit, visually communicates something to me about this place, and maybe I should go and look there. And so trying to do the same kind of thing, where characters in dialogue, which is delivered to you through cards, like their face on it or whatever, will help deliver some of the narrative to you, and perhaps set you on the right track. And I have a long list of ideas about how mechanics are going to be. Now, in the last episode, where we talked about things with Elise, we talked a little bit about an escape room, which is a little bit more like an escape room experience rather than an escape room in a box, something more akin to Box 1 from Neil Patrick Harris. Instead of an escape room experience, which is like you have the whole room designed with props and stuff like that, which we can't really do. The goal is to design a board game, and I think making a full escape room experience like that goes a little bit beyond the scope. But the puzzle design is similar, and that's the thing that I want to be needling in on. So when it came to looking at mechanics, I needed to limit myself to stuff that I could actually build and prototype. And so the first thing that I wanted to do is use something like acrylic standees, which is out of the scope of what I can build easily. However, you can get my trusty clips to these bad boys. If you put them on a card, it will sit on a table just fine, and it works just like a standee. So the plan is to use some cards, make some standees, and that's going to be how we're delivering the locations. So all of the different planets and key locations and stuff like that are going to have their own standee, and same with all the NPCs and stuff that you'll be talking to will have their own standee, and so that you know who is where and who you're talking to. And so that was kind of where I started. I was like, okay, I want locations on the table, because part of the Outer Wilds experience is exploring locations. It's like, okay, I want you to feel like you're physically traveling to a place by moving things around on what feels like like an orbital map. So I thought that was a good place to start. But you don't have them all immediately to you. You might discover them not necessarily one by one, but like you might get like a couple at a time. So you might not immediately go to Dark Bramble. Actually, on my very first playthrough of Outer Wilds, my very first loop, I went directly to Dark Bramble and went in there and explored, and I actually found nothing. And I landed my ship on the surface. I got out. I got my spacesuit. I flew into Dark Bramble, and I found nothing. I ran out of air and died. And so I'm trying to make it more like that linear mechanical experience that a puzzle like that kind of has, where you go, well, here's the first thing. That kind of communicates to me what the next thing should be. Oh, I'm going to go and try to investigate that. What's at that place? I want to go and look at that. And it's going to give you like just several forks, basically, where you go, well, I could try out this thing, or I could go and look at that, or unlock a couple of planets at a time to you, so you're kind of picking where you want to go. And then there's going to be a couple of keys and gates. So it'd be like, you can't progress past this thing until you've learned this piece of information. Outer Wilds does this a ton. For example, with ghost matter, there's indicators that ghost matter exists, but you don't know specifically where within those indicators are fatal to you until you learn the secret to overcome the ghost matter. This is going to be kind of the same. Learning the secret to overcoming the ghost matter is the key that lets you pass through those areas that have been indicated that ghost matter is there. We were doing a couple of keys and gates like that, which try and use some of the tools that are in the game, the scout, the signal scope, and stuff like that. And so the idea is that you might enter a location, you'll learn a bunch of things, and then you'll come up against a gate, okay, this is indicating to me that I should go and look at somewhere else first, and find what the key to this gate is, and that will give you kind of like several tiers of things that you can do at a place, so you're going somewhere and you're coming back a couple of times. And the way that I'm thinking that's kind of be communicated is just in a deck of cards, but the deck of cards can't be shuffled, it's going to be delivered in a specific order, where it's like the first couple cards is you having dialogue with Hornfellas, for example, starting Timberhearth, and he goes, hello, this is what the beginning of the game is, this is the tutorial. And then you enter a gate at the end, which is like, well, you need to come back here once you've learned about this thing to then go on to what's next. And that'll deliver more story or have more characters doing stuff. Now, that's kind of the core interacting with the components part. And actually designing all of the cards is going to be really tough, because compared to previously in the series with the Against the Storm, I go, I need this building because it contributes something. I go, okay, how is this building made? Great. How many copies do I want? Great. Put it in the deck. What that building does and how it is connected to most of the things is not as relevant, and because you already know what materials you're supposed to receive and all that stuff is kind of built in the tech tree of Against the Storm. You're just like, I'm just communicating that stuff to the player with the card. In this, every single card will be unique and different, and every single card will contribute something to the greater puzzle, and there's currently looking like there's going to be a lot of them. I'm really struggling with component bloat because I normally make small games. So far, both these games are incredibly ambitious and incredibly large. But I think that's fine. I think I'm up to the challenge. Now, some of the problems that I have, and working on this the last couple of days, I literally get to the point where I feel like my brain is overheating because it's really complicated to track all the kind of stuff. But like, I've got kind of the first 14 cards at Timber Hearth, and a couple of 10 cards at Dark Bramble, and like some of the locations where a lot of stuff happens. And the goal is to map a path throughout all the different decks where it's not only one option at a time. You have a couple of different ways that it can work, and also a couple of extra different cards that do nothing. Now, I'll get to that in a second, but at the moment, I don't know if I want to go more complex than this, but at the moment we have three main puzzles. Talking about them too much will spoil a little bit of it, but the first puzzle, you are given all the planets in the wrong order and you don't realize this. So putting the planets in the correct order is going to be also I know that there's orbits and all this kind of stuff, but we're just doing it like a classic linear one where it's like, here's the sun, here's Mercury, here's Venus, and so on, where it's just like in a line. That's how it's going to be kind of placed on the table, and then you putting them in the correct order is going to be one puzzle that is kind of revealed to you. It's like, here's the next planet. You're like, well, here's the next planet. Great, I'm going to go there. And then as you have a whole bunch of planets, you start to realize, hang on a minute, these are perhaps in the wrong order. How, what's the puzzle here? How do I get them in the right order? What does changing the planet's order to be correct change? That's going to be one of the puzzles. The second puzzle is, in each of the decks on the different planets, there is a couple of different types of cards. The main ones, which delivers all of the dialogue to you, is going to have like a matching. Going back to what in the last episode, Elise mentioned that you can use matching textures to link things together, or colors or patterns. That's kind of the idea. We're going to be building a tableau of cards across, because I just love tableaus. If you're familiar with my work, nearly everything has a tableau in it. We're going to be building a tableau, and it's exactly 10 cards, and it's 10 specific cards, but you don't know which cards they are, because there's lots of that card type. Right, so let's say if there's 40 of that card type, 30 of them will be wrong, 10 of them will be correct. And they'll build out a specific line, and it communicates like the main important plot beats, and like one comes from each of the different planets, and then you have to put them all in the correct order, which will spell out like a secret message, which you go, oh, if I do this thing, it will unlock this next thing for me. And communicating mechanically how that tableau is built is going to be part of the game, which at the moment it's like, when you get those cards, you put them into the tableau, and then like you can only replace them with other stuff, or you can only place it if it matches with the pattern, otherwise it gets discarded. And then one of the tools that you get later on, which is like maybe the signal scope or the scout or something, will let you return cards from the discard pile back to your hand. Because there's going to be a bunch of cards that either just deliver something to you and then do nothing, and then just go in the discard pile. Because there's no point putting it back in the deck or like leaving it out on the table. You might as well like pack it away. And so building out this tableau is going to be one of the puzzles. And then the last puzzle, some of this might, hint to you what some of the story is going to be, and like maybe spoil things a little bit. The planets being in the wrong order and stuff is definitely part of it. But the third puzzle is you have to move NPCs around. Now, basically Hornfels is like, look, just bring back the entire Outer Wilds Ventures team. And so you have to go to all different places that has people on them and bring them home. This kind of happens naturally in a different way in the video game. Again, spoilers, but I'm trying my best to be vague. And in this, we're trying to do something similar, but with a different outcome. And you can't just put them all on the ship and bring them home. You can only move them to an adjacent planet. So this all ties in with the planets are in the wrong order. You got to try and move people to get them to the place that they're trying to get to. And then having the specific person in a specific place is going to unlock new or specific information. Like an actual NPC might be a key to a gate at a particular place. For example, Feldspar reveals a bunch of things to you that helps you solve Giant's Deep. So what if we just actually took Feldspar to Giant's Deep instead, and then he tells us that directly, he's like, oh, I get how this works. This is the thing. And so moving NPCs around to find out where their final destination needs to be is going to be that third major puzzle. And you can see that they probably overlap a lot, because if the planets change locations, or order rather, then moving them between them is going to be much easier. And so you're kind of tracking like where the different people need to go, how they're moving, and there will be cards in the different decks that will unlock your ability to move a person to a specific place if it's next to that planet. And so that's kind of the three main puzzles, which kind of make everything align correctly to reveal the whole narrative to the player. That's the goal. I am unsure if this is too much or not enough. But at the moment, there's a lot of cards that are going to be printed out to make this happen. We have 10 different locations. Telling you what they are is going to spoil some of the puzzle, because some of them are a surprise. Because obviously there's like much more than 10 in the game if you're including like Giant's Deep and the probe cannon separately, so some things are bundled together, some things are not bundled together, some things are more important than others, and so on. And then picking out how each of them is going to be delivering things, writing, like the dialogue that the character is going to deliver to you, and picking all the keys and gates and picking where the different stuff is going to go is going to be a challenge. And that's the idea behind the series. That is what I'm trying to, accomplish here. The point is to be challenging me, trying to, do this whole professional development thing that I really like, where I challenge myself to something that's outside my board game designer wheelhouse. I come together, I try and build it. I think the Against the Storm game is a great example of this, because it is actually the biggest functioning game that I have constructed a prototype for. And I've worked on big concept stuff before, but a lot of the time I get to a point where I can't see what the finished product looks like, and it is difficult to continue. And especially if I don't, if the idea is, I'm going to build this and I'm going to publish it, and then it doesn't come together, and it's like, well, if I don't believe in it 1,000%, I'm not going to pursue self-publishing it. But for this series, I have that productivity loophole where it's for YouTube. I'm building it so that you can watch it. I obviously cannot publish an Against the Storm game because I do not own the IP. Perhaps, if I believe in it 1,000,000%, then I will, retheme it to be something else, repackage all the mechanics, and, redesign a tech tree or whatever. Outer Wilds is kind of the same. This is going to be so specific to Outer Wilds because it's telling part of the Outer Wilds story to you. Because it has to juggle telling some of the existing story and telling some new story, right? Because if you haven't played the Outer Wilds video game, you might be completely lost if some of the context is not delivered to you. And obviously I will not be able to publish that. So the whole point is to create something that's going to improve my skills as a game designer, understand a new genre of game a little bit better, maybe up my puzzle designing skills, and then deliver something that fans of the Outer Wild games are going to appreciate. That is the goal. And it needs to feel like an Outer Wilds experience, which I think is going to be tough, but also a challenge. Now, if you're excited to see more about this, because in the next couple of episodes, maybe I will have finalized the game design. We can run through the how to play rules. You can see me designing some of the prototype. In the last season, we had a whole episode which was just me in Photoshop working through how I design stuff. Because, and other game designers are like, Heath, why don't you use something like Namdeck or whatever that one automatically goes and prints out all the cards? Because I actually design the cards in Photoshop while I'm making the cards. Very rarely do I use a document in advance to make everything. This is one of those few times where I have to build everything in advance because it's so interconnected. Normally, I'll go, I know I need the workshop, and then while I'm in Photoshop, I go, well, how much is the workshop going to cost? What needs to be communicated to the player on that? Is there text here? Is, what is kind of happening? And that kind of happens at the moment. I'll decide what the construction costs and that kind of stuff is while I'm building it. Because I'm seeing it there. The card is real to me in the Photoshop panel, and I can imagine what the final project is going to look like, and so that's when all the magic comes together. So I think it's an important part of the process. So maybe that will be next. Maybe there will be more steps in between, because this is a tough design. Now, that is going to be it for this, cheeky little explanation of what I have so far on the design of the game, because I don't want to spoil too much, because I want you to be able to see it all come together when we do the final playthrough towards the end of the season. So stick around. On the screen, I'm going to have the full playlist of all the From Computer to Cardboard. So if you missed the Against the Storm stuff, you can go back and you can watch that. If this is not the most recent episode, you can find immediately what happens next in this Outer Wilds series by checking out that playlist. I will also just have like a random video up because there's a whole bunch of other stuff on this channel that I do, and it's all kind of different and fun and goofy, and maybe there's something that you like on there. And as always, the subscribe button, which is the best way for you to get delivered more Outer Wilds board game content, is by sticking around and letting the algorithm gods deliver it to you. So, this video is exactly 22 minutes long. It's time for me to click reset. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I had to have this last little gag in here. I really just had to do it. I had to do it to him.